For years, the world's most valuable shipwreck was just a legend, until now. It has finally been found, and among the wreckage was a real treasure worth $1.1 billion. To understand this better, we need to go back to 1622. That year, the mighty Spanish galleon Nuestra Señora de Atocha set sail from Havana, packed with riches belonging both to King Philip IV of Spain and to the wealthy members of the crew. We're talking about gold, silver, copper, and emeralds from Colombia, Peru, Mexico, and Venezuela. The cargo was so large, totaling more than 40 tons, and so vast that it took 2 months to transport it to the ship. The ship was also packed with people. There were 265 people on board. At first, everything went well, but then came the Florida Straits and trouble. The crew found themselves lost in the night that was not only cold, but also stormy. And before long, they were facing a powerful hurricane. The wind tore the masts apart. Giant waves destroyed the rudder, and soon, the Atocha was sinking toward the darkness of the seabed. The disaster that night meant a huge loss of wealth for King Philip IV, but even worse was the loss of life. Of the original 265 crew members, only 5 survived. They managed to climb up the mizzen of the ship, the only part that remained above water. With all that treasure gone, the Spanish were quick to spring into action and devised a salvage operation. 5 ships were sent to recover the cargo. The plan seemed simple and easy. After all, the hatches were securely locked, so the treasure could still be there. But almost immediately, things went wrong. For example, one of the 5 ships ran aground before it could even begin its journey. In the end, the search dragged on for 60 years, and many factors contributed to the mission's failure. That may not seem so bad today, but back then, divers didn't have the technology or safety equipment that we have today. Exploring the seabed was risky, and more often than not, it led nowhere. While searching for the Atocha, the rescuers found traces of another vessel, the Santa Margarita, the Atocha's sister ship. Another hurricane passed through the region a month after the sinking. The seabed became a jigsaw puzzle with pieces of the ship scattered everywhere. The rescue mission became almost impossible. Over time, the Spanish managed to recover part of the Santa Margarita's cargo, but Atocha's treasure seemed lost forever. Even so, no one forgot that story. Then in 1969, more than 300 years after the sinking, everything began to change. An experienced deep-sea diver, Mel Fisher, stepped in and decided to rewrite history. Mel had already spent a big part of his life at the bottom of the sea. He and his wife even ran a diving school in California. So, Mel gathered his family and moved to the other side of the country. He led a new team of hunters whose mission was clear: to find the lost treasure of the legendary Atocha. They had little more than a boat, some diving equipment, and metal detectors, but that was enough to get them started. They focused on a region called the Matacumbe Keys, mentioned in several 17th century documents. In the first year, they traveled more than 100,000 miles but found absolutely nothing. It seemed like an impossible dream. But Mel still had a card up his sleeve. Eugene Lyon, a historian who would change the course of the search. Eugene delved into the Spanish archives in search of clues about the shipwreck. It was there that he found an important document that mentioned a group of people trying to save it. On the last page, it was mentioned that an area 100 miles from where Mel was searching had been the scene of the main exploration. This little piece of information was the needle in the haystack they needed. They rerouted the ship and soon arrived at the new location. But there was a challenge. That part of the ocean was deeper and the visibility there was almost zero. It was difficult to see your own hands. However, Mel knew how to deal with the adversities of diving and came up with a simple and brilliant solution. He installed 2 large tubes on the boat called letterboxes. Those tubes could be lowered in front of the propellers. The idea was ingenious. They sucked clean water from the surface and directed it to the bottom of the sea, exactly where the divers were. This technique not only cleared the murky water, but also helped to reveal objects that had been hidden for centuries. And still, the search took 16 years. During that time, Fisher found many lost items. Then, in 1971, they discovered a huge anchor. This was the first clue that they were close to finding the Atocha. In the following days, more objects appeared. Cups, swords, and ancient nails turned up. To keep everything organized, the team created a circular map. On it, they marked the exact location of each item they found. They also used radio transmitters on land and a receiver on the boat, which allowed them to know precisely where they were. The system was so efficient that it could measure the position with a margin of error of just 1 foot. Over time, a line began to form on the map, pointing to where the Atocha's main treasure might be hidden. They followed this trail for 2 years. Just when they were starting to lose hope, they found silver bars. It was the year 1973. This opened the door to much bigger discoveries. The silver alone was worth over $100,000, but the real treasure was yet to come. On July 20th, 1985, valuables that would be worth around $1.1 billion today were finally discovered in the main hull of the ship. The treasure included 180,000 silver coins, 24 tons of silver bars, 125 gold bars, a collection of pearls, and 66 pounds of emeralds. Some of these finds were priceless, not only because they were rare, but because of their history. The Atocha cross, the royal orb, and the Atocha ring, 3 royal artifacts, were found in near-perfect condition. The Atocha cross was the most valuable of all the artifacts. It had 9 brilliant green emeralds set in 22-karat gold. A true treasure from the past, shining once again after centuries underwater. Soon after the discovery, the state of Florida thought, wait a second, we want a piece of that treasure. They went to court, demanding a whopping 25% of the value. A bitter legal battle ensued, and it lasted 8 years. It even went all the way to the Supreme Court. But in the end, treasure hunter Mel emerged victorious. He was even invited to The Tonight Show, showing off a massive gold chain found in the wreckage, wrapped around his waist like a belt. People called it the money chain, and for good reason. The find was so big that the wreck was declared the world's most valuable by the Guinness Book of Records in 2014. After the initial excitement, Mel sold some of the gems, but the bulk of the treasure remained in the family for a while. What was left was auctioned off. No one knows exactly how much the jewels were sold for, but one thing is for sure. Their value has skyrocketed over the years, and it's not just about the sparkle, it's about the legend that lives behind them. Today, these treasures are part of the particular Museo collection, the largest private collection of the Atocha artifacts in the world. And no, they're not for sale. But the good news is that you can still see them. They're on display, shining brightly in homage to Colombia's rich history and the famous mine from which they came. The people behind them say that these emeralds are as iconic as the rubies of Mogok or the sapphires of Kashmir. And honestly, they're right. Let's face it, most ancient tombs have been looted at least once. No matter how scary the rumors could have been, most mummies were open too. But one. This is the Bashiri mummy, and it puzzles everyone so much that nobody dares to see what's inside. Meet Howard, but you must know him already if you're into Egyptian history. He's primarily famous for discovering King Tut's tomb back in 1922. But few people know that before this revolutionary discovery, he had probably found another mummy. It happened in 1919, and it goes by several names, either the Bashiri mummy or the mummy of Pacheri, or the untouchable one. Some reports say that Howard stumbled upon the Bashiri mummy in Luxor's Valley of the Kings, just where he would later find Tut's tomb. Despite this find, not much is known about this particular mummy. The reason why it's still unharmed in any way is not because of some superstitions, but because nobody is sure that they can undo what they do if something goes wrong. The mummy is so intricately wrapped that researchers never unfurled it for fear of irreversible damage. The golden rule of anyone who works with antiquities: if you're not sure you can't make it better or preserve it unchanged, do not touch it. History knows many examples of ancient relics ruined beyond repair. Say Ecce Homo. or smiling statue restoration. The delicate fabric that covers the mummy's face has this cool design that kind of looks like a pyramid. The researchers are not 100% sure, but this might be the only one of its kind with that embalming style. But without knowing the ancient technique, it's next to impossible not to ruin the mummy while unwrapping and wrapping it back. Back in the day, people, both experts and looters, would unwrap mummies for all sorts of reasons, mostly to study them. Luckily, these days, we have advanced tech that lets us check out what's inside a sarcophagus without having to unwrap anything. After taking a closer look at the Bashiri mummy, researchers figured out that it belonged to a man who was around 5.5 feet tall and lived during the Ptolemaic era, which makes this mummy roughly 2,300 years old. The Egypt Museum shared that the X-ray scan also uncovered an inscription of the guy's name, but it's a bit tricky to tell if it says Pacheri or Nenu, adding to the intrigue. The museum also pointed out that the fancy casing the mummy is in features all sorts of decorated scenes. You can see the mummy lying on a bed, flanked by deities Isis and Nephthys, along with the 4 sons of Horus. Plus, there are 2 images of the funerary god Anubis at the feet of the casing. By the way, Bashiri mummy is not the only one that has remained untouched. This is Issa Temkebde, and Gaston Maspero, a French archaeologist, made the decision to leave her mummy untouched, wanting to keep her resting peacefully since she was in such amazing shape. He did mention, though, that her tomb had been raided long ago. Thanks to some X-ray work, we learned more about the mummy. The scans revealed a few artifacts still wrapped up with the wife of a high priest, including amulets around her neck, right arm, and forehead. The X-rays also showed she had some dental issues and arthritis in her knees. While she passed away as an older woman, it's tough to pinpoint her exact age. However, various sources from her son's reign indicate that she was held in high regard in the kingdom. Isitemkebd served as the sister wife of Penejam II. You got me right, they were related by blood and were siblings, but back then it was pretty common to get married this way to preserve the purity of the bloodline. Say that to Habsburg, duh. Their chase for purity only led to inbreeding and the notorious Habsburg's jaw. Right, I guess we should not judge ancient Egyptian rules and morals, but what we can say for sure is that both Bashiri and Isitemkebd were incredibly lucky to stay untouched. The odds were not in King Tut's favor, though. The researchers' work hit him hard. The tomb itself was discovered in 1922, but it wasn't until 1925 that the nested coffins were opened during an excavation. The outer coffin, held together with silver pins, opened up to show another coffin shaped like a mummy, decorated with colorful glass and flower garlands. There were worries about the king's mummy because it had been exposed to moisture. The middle coffin was pretty heavy and didn't have any handles, so they had to be super careful taking it out. Inside the innermost coffin, which was solid gold and wrapped in a red cloth, they found the royal mummy, and this all went down on October 28, 1925. Tutankhamun's mummy, measuring about 6.07 feet, fit snugly into the innermost coffin, which was 6.17 feet long. You can already tell there was a problem, right? Imagine how hard it is to extract something as fragile as an ancient dried-up mummy, especially when there's not much room for maneuver. Plus, the mummy looked sus. It was pitch black. Howard Carter, the lead archaeologist of the expedition, estimated that around 2 buckets worth of oils had been poured over the mummy. But care had been taken to avoid the mask and feet. It was made to preserve him better. The body was positioned at a slight angle in the coffin, and there was a noticeable difference in the amount of dark oils on the right and left sides, indicating that the coffin might have tilted while being lowered into the sarcophagus. This oil created moisture inside the coffins, and over time, it reacted chemically, which Carter described as a sort of slow, spontaneous combustion, leading to the carbonization of the linen wrappings. Unfortunately, the combination of heat and moisture took a toll on the mummy's trappings as well. The crook and flail fell apart, the resin scarab cracked, and the threads holding the hands and mummy's bands started to decay, making everything quite fragile. Plus, the oils hardened over the years, effectively gluing the mummy and mask to the coffin's bottom. To try and separate the mummy from the inner and middle coffins, they were placed in the sun for several hours, reaching temperatures of 149 degrees Fahrenheit. Despite this effort, the mummy remained stuck, so the initial examination had to be done right where it was. The first part of Tutankhamun's mummy the researchers checked out was his lower legs and feet, meaning they started the examination from the bottom up. As they peeled back the bandages, they uncovered the first of many treasures wrapped up with the king. They took their time to carefully document and photograph everything they found. The inner layers of bandages were in pretty bad shape, mostly turning to dust, making it tough to figure out how everything was originally wrapped. Still, the overall methods matched what was seen in other nobles' mummies from that time. Lots of folded linen pads were used to shape the torso and thighs. The outer and inner bandages were made from fine linen, while the middle layers were coarser. They had some intricate bandaging around the shoulders and chest with a similar style around the groin. Each limb, along with fingers and toes, which were fitted with gold caps, was wrapped separately. Tutankhamun even wore gold foil sandals on his feet. They hoped to separate the mummy from the coffin by removing the outer bandages, but the resins had stuck the body to the coffin. So, the researchers ended up chiseling it out. To do this, they had to cut the torso in half at the hips and disarticulate the arms to continue unwrapping. Each part was treated with hot paraffin wax for stability, and later the hands and feet were reattached with resin. Finally, they used hot knives to detach the head from the mask. To check the teeth, it was decided to make an incision around the jaw and neck, which was later fixed with resin. So technically, the scientists did all they could to preserve the mummy, but still, in a way, it ended up being damaged beyond repair. What do you think? Should they have left it in the coffin? Or did they do the right thing? Let us know in the comments. It started as a routine cleaning to scoop some mud off the coast of Indonesia, but turned into a discovery of remnants of a lost, submerged, Ice Age landmass. Archaeologists found more than 6,000 fossil fragments, and among them, 140,000-year-old Homo erectus remains. This find made scientists rethink how early humans lived, moved, and interacted in Southeast Asia. For years, they thought that Homo erectus on Java Island lived in isolation, separated from the rest of the world. But these dredged fossils blew that story apart. It turns out Java wasn't an island at all back then, but part of a landmass called Sundaland. So, Southeast Asia stretched out like someone had drained the ocean, connecting Indonesia, Malaysia, Borneo, Thailand, and Vietnam into one gigantic landscape. Today's islands of Java, Sumatra, Borneo, and Bali were connected by river systems that probably looked like the Amazon, by forests where giant animals roamed, and by coastal plains that would later sink beneath the ocean when temperatures went up. And Homo erectus were not stuck. They were thriving in what honestly sounds like prehistoric bliss. Yep, it was nothing like we normally imagine Ice Age, a sort of frozen wasteland. Sea levels dropped more than 400 feet because so much water froze into glaciers. When all that water got locked up in ice, whole sections of the ocean floor popped out of the water like stepping stones. Suddenly, early humans didn't need boats. They could literally walk from what's now mainland Southeast Asia all the way to places that are islands today. They could do it while exploring and chasing herds across open land. It was sort of like a giant prehistoric highway system. That giant highway matters because it completely rewrites how early humans moved around. Instead of being trapped, Homo erectus had a whole continent to roam. They followed rivers, crossed valleys, and adapted to different environments the same way you learn shortcuts to the office or find new routes to your favorite coffee shop. And because everything was connected, animals wandered freely too. Tigers, elephants, supersized cows, and turtles the size of small cars. People followed these big animals. This among the fossils pulled from the Madura Strait, such as cut-marked turtle shells and cracked open bovid bones. When you see precise cut marks on bone, it means someone was deliberately carving meat off the bone with tools they made themselves. And cracked bones mean they were taking out marrow, which was like prehistoric energy gel, rich, fatty, and perfect when you need calories to survive. That's a level of planning and skill scientists didn't expect from Homo erectus. It pushes Homo erectus closer to species like early Homo sapiens and Denisovans when it comes to behavior. It means they weren't just surviving on scraps, they were actively pursuing animals, processing, and maybe even sharing food the same way later humans did. So if you imagine them as slow, hunched cavemen, forget that. These people were sharp. The techniques they used to process food look eerily similar to those used by other hominins. Not just Homo erectus, we're talking Homo floresiensis, Denisovans, and early Homo sapiens. That opens the door to the possibility that these groups didn't just exist side by side. They might have interacted. Maybe they traded ideas and copied techniques. Or maybe they even interbred or shared territories. All this makes Southeast Asia look not like a series of isolated islands, but like a buzzing human ecosystem, a place where different human species crossed paths. And here's the heartbreaking part. Everything we know about this place, everything humans built, lost, and discovered there, is all underwater now. When the Ice Age ended, glaciers melted like forgotten ice cream cones on a hot sidewalk. Sea levels rose. Slowly, then quickly, rivers flooded, coastlines vanished. Entire human landscapes disappeared beneath the waves. Sundaland drowned over thousands of years, and the people who lived there either adapted or moved to higher ground. Archaeologists now try to interpret what these people did, how they lived, and how many human species walked that land. Every time they pull together bone or artifact from the seabed, we get one step closer to rewriting everything we thought we knew about early human migration. And the new discovery could mean that Southeast Asia may have been just as important to human evolution as Africa, the Middle East, or Europe. Looks like Sundaland wasn't a side quest, but a real mixing zone, a place where humanity experimented, adapted, learned, and evolved. Unexpected finds like this one in Indonesia keep popping up around the world and surprising scientists. Farmers in China were hoping to scoop up bat droppings for natural fertilizers inside a narrow limestone cave. But instead, they spotted pieces of fossilized bone that looked suspiciously like parts of a human skull. This skull turned out to be ridiculously old, around 300,000 years old. Scientists eventually named the fossil Maba 1. The discovery happened way back in 1958, but ever since then, nobody could agree on which ancient human species this skull belonged to. During the late Middle Pleistocene, the world was basically a crowded highway of different ancient human species wandering around. Or just maybe, Maba 1 came from a species we've never met before. The big issue was that researchers only found part of the skull, no jaw, no other bones. So it was like trying to solve a giant puzzle with half the pieces missing. For ages, scientists guessed it might be Neanderthal. But now they've used micro-CT scanning, which is like an X-ray superpower that lets you peek inside fossils without breaking them. That's when they noticed weird tube-like structures connecting parts of the brain case, something Neanderthals basically never had. The inside shape of the skull looked way more like Homo erectus, a much older human species. But even that wasn't a perfect match. The skull's size and shape were closer to modern humans and Neanderthals, and it showed traits Homo erectus usually didn't have. For example, it had a shorter forehead area and a thickened bregma, the meeting point between two skull bones. Maba 1 also had a strange dent on the forehead, almost like a bruise frozen in time. Whatever caused it, maybe a fall, maybe anemia, it happened while the person was alive. But there was no sign of infection, so that individual probably healed and kept living after whatever hit them. So Maba 1 doesn't match any known species perfectly, but it shares features with several and has a similar mystery fossil vibe as others found across Africa. In 1976, a famous paleontologist and her team found another human-like skull in Tanzania. That skull had features that looked surprisingly similar to Homo sapiens, even though it was unbelievably old. Scientists think it may be one of the earliest examples of our species ever discovered. That means this skull could help solve one of science's biggest questions. When exactly did Homo sapiens first show up? The sediment layer where that skull was found goes all the way back to the Middle Pleistocene. That's way earlier than what old textbooks used to claim about when modern humans appeared. And then there's a skull that turned up in Zambia's Broken Hill ore mine. Miners literally stumbled on it, plus a few other bones, completely by accident. Scientists started calling it Rhodesian Man, and at first, everyone thought it might be the big missing link between Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. But with newer research tools and better dating methods, they discovered it's around 299,000 years old and probably belonged to someone from the species Homo heidelbergensis. Every new fossil acts like a missing puzzle piece on the giant chaotic story of human evolution. Each one helps scientists connect species that once seemed unrelated, redraw family trees, and rewrite chapters of our past we didn't even know were wrong. You're probably familiar with the saying, X marks the spot. It comes from pirate lore and adventure stories often linked with treasure maps. They may be out of fashion these days, but that doesn't stop countless antiquity hunters from searching through hills and fields daily. One such enthusiast didn't have a map with a giant X on it, but when his metal detector beeped on a sunny day in April 2025, he uncovered one of the largest buried coin hoards ever recorded. So, what kind of treasure are we talking about here, and what makes it so unique? The discovery was made by Romanian hobbyist Marius Manghia, who says he just wanted an excuse to get some exercise and fresh air. During one of those walks with his metal detector in a location 30 miles southwest of Bucharest, the device picked up a signal. As he began to dig, he found a handful of silver coins just beneath the surface. Though oxidized, they seemed remarkably well preserved. Oxidation happens when metal reacts with air or moisture over time, causing it to change color, darken, or develop a crusty surface. Just like a sliced apple darkens when exposed to air if left out too long. The pile of coins grew quickly. Soon, it was obvious they were all packed into a ceramic jar. The final count was nearly 1,500 silver denarii, Roman coins likely buried around 1,700 years ago. However, these denarii date from the reigns of emperors Nero to Marcus Aurelius, covering over a century during the Roman imperial period, which means they're almost 2,000 years old. The presence of coins from multiple emperors suggests that the wealth was accumulated over many years. The Roman money system had a bunch of different coin types, so finding only silver denarii in the stash is a bit odd. It would be like burying $15,000 in cash, but all of it $10 bills. It could mean that the original owner was a trader. Maybe he was hiding his profits during dangerous times. Perhaps it was simply someone's life savings. Depending on the emperor and the period, the value of denarius fluctuated quite a bit, so 1,500 denarii could have been either a comfortable retirement fund or not nearly enough. In the 1st century, one silver denarius could get you 12 loaves of bread, and if you have 5 of them, you could buy an amphora full of wine. An amphora was a large 2-handled ceramic jar used to store and transport wine, oil, or grain, and it seems to be the type of vessel in which this treasure was buried. Though amphorae were made in many different shapes and sizes, the Romans eventually standardized them as a unit of measurement, with one amphora being roughly equal to 7 gallons of liquid. The spot where the jar was buried wasn't tampered with. This might indicate that the hoard remained undetected all this time, but the amphora had already been broken when it was found. But why would it be broken, and what could that mean? While the exact cause of the breakage has not been explained yet, archaeologists say it may have been broken on purpose as part of a protective ritual before burial. In some ancient cultures, ritual vessels were deliberately damaged as a symbolic act. Maybe it means the jar had done its job, either as an offering to the gods or to keep someone from stealing it. You can have my silver, but I'm not giving you my precious jar. However, such rituals were not common in Roman culture, so it's a mystery for now. Perhaps it broke because the jar contained silver while being exposed to 2 millennia of soil pressure, freeze-thaw cycles, root growth, or a blind mole rat trying to find its way around. Although the amphora and its silver are now being preserved and examined by experts, their discoverer almost ended up unrewarded. After finding the hoard, he had to notify the police so they could secure the site. However, he was under pressure because in Romania, you have 72 hours to report any significant historical find. Unfortunately for Mr. Mangiak, he ran into a problem since it was a holiday and the offices he needed to contact were closed. He spent the following 2 days meticulously photographing every single coin before finally being able to present his findings to the authorities. While the exact amount of prize Mr. Mangiak might receive isn't publicly known, Romanian law typically awards 45% of a discovery's appraised value to the finder. Not a bad outcome for what started as a casual walk with a metal detector. Meanwhile, the site itself had been declared an archaeological zone, and any future digging will be done under expert supervision, which means that this story might have a follow-up one day. But for now, let's focus on what makes metal detectors beep and see if there are more hidden troves to be found around the world. Today, most hobby-grade detectors rely on something called VLF technology, where VLF stands for very low frequency. When you sweep the detector over the ground, its coil sends out an invisible magnetic field. If something metallic is within that field, for example a nail, a discarded wedding ring, or ancient Roman silver, it bounces back a signal. The device picks that up and beeps to let you know something's there. The stronger the signal, the closer or bigger the object probably is. Basically, it's using electromagnetic induction to make buried metal respond, like calling into a cave and listening for the echo coming back at you. Fun fact, bats use a similar principle to detect what's in their environment, but with sound. It's called echolocation. If you yell in a cave and disturb a bat, it might send out high-pitched clicks that bounce off objects and return as echoes, helping them pinpoint everything around them. Doesn't matter if it's a tiny insect or a pesky human in complete darkness. Metal detectors use magnetic waves. Bats use squeaks and echoes. Now, if all this got you curious about grabbing a detector yourself, what are some major locations to consider? Mr. Mangiak simply went for a walk, but for many, it's a rewarding hobby that helps history and also pays off well. And not just in Romania, but all over the world. In the UK, regions like Norfolk, Suffolk, and Lincolnshire have become hotspots where enthusiasts regularly uncover Roman coins, Viking relics, and medieval artifacts. During the Iron Age, burying valuables was a common practice. Some researchers think it was done as a way of storing valuables. Others think it was part of a ritual. But either way, many of those hoards could still be there. France also has plenty of stuff hidden beneath the ground, including ancient Roman and Gallic treasures. In the Netherlands, someone recently uncovered a fragment of an extremely rare Viking sword. Scotland is no exception either, and findings like Peebles' hoard give additional insights into the Bronze Age. If you don't feel like venturing alone, there are organized metal detecting tours available in various countries, offering guided access to historically rich sites. That's if you're planning to search for lost relics. But what if you want to bury your own treasure chest and hide it from a metal detector? How far do you need to dig? Most hobby-grade detectors can spot a large object close to 3 feet deep. Smaller stuff like coins, just 6 to 8 inches. We also have to take into consideration that wet ground can actually boost detection. It helps signals travel better and makes buried metal easier to spot. On the other hand, professional, expensive detectors that use advanced technology can detect large metallic targets at depths of almost 100 feet, especially on a rainy day. But unless you bury your chest in a strategically important place, odds are it'll stay uncovered. Just don't forget to mark the spot on your map with an X.
Once upon a time, I searched through the jungle, following a map poorly drawn on a piece of cloth. After days of walking, I reached an ancient Mayan temple. As soon as I stepped in, a strange noise echoed. I turned to leave, but suddenly the floor cracked beneath my feet. I fell into a 1600-year-old tomb. Finally, I got lucky. That day, I walked out with shiny jades, carved seashells, a creepy afterlife mask, and a curse that's been haunting me ever since. Well, okay, maybe it didn't happen exactly like that. Or maybe it didn't happen to me. Sadly, real-life archaeology is not like Indiana Jones movies. However, the findings can be as exciting and important, especially in Belize, where archaeologists just found the first identifiable ruler's tomb in the lost Mayan city of Caracol after 40 years of digging. A team of archaeologists finally unsealed a hidden chamber, buried deep beneath a structure they'd already studied. And inside that tomb, which is indeed around 1600 years old, was Chak, the first known king of Caracol. His name is commonly interpreted as tree branch rain deity, which is poetic and incredibly awesome. King Chak was believed to be a Mayan deity in control of rain, thunder, and lightning. According to folklore, he used axes to strike rain-bearing snakes in the sky to make the rain fall. The buried king is considered to be the dynasty founder. The royal dynasty he founded lasted more than 460 years. And judging by what was buried with him, we can assume that King Chak was greatly celebrated. His tomb had jade beads, carved bones, seashell jewelry, and ritual pottery vessels. One of those vessels shows Atocha, the Maya deity of trade, receiving offerings. Others showed bound prisoners. Archaeologists could tell they had found some high royalty when they noticed a considerable presence of red cinnabar in the tomb, a rare and expensive material from the Mayan world. Then there's a jade mosaic mask, pieced together like a puzzle to cover the king's face in brilliant green. Jade wasn't used just because it was shiny. It was sacred and symbolically associated with life and demise. Polished jade glistens like it's been dipped in water, cool at first, but quickly warming in your hand. To the ancient Maya, this lifelike quality made jade a living, breathing substance. And for this reason, it possessed high religious and spiritual importance. The Maya associated it with the breath of life, with royalty, and with eternity. Covering someone's face in jade showed just how high-ranking that person was. King Chak's mask has yet to be examined properly, but another famous mask of King Pakal was made of over 346 green jade stone fragments. That's a lot of painstaking work. But maybe the most symbolically fascinating thing about this king was that he was old. Not just lived a good life old, toothless old. To us, that means he didn't clean his teeth properly, because, no, you don't usually lose teeth just from getting old, as long as you maintain good oral hygiene and dental care. On the other hand, according to Maya legends, toothless elders were believed to have spiritual powers. Rulers and shamans mediated between realms, and aged or underworld deities were often shown as toothless in art. Now, speaking of realms, Mayan cosmology divided the universe into three layers. The upper world was where the deities lived. The middle world was where humans lived. It was carried on the back of a giant turtle or caiman, and surrounded by a primordial sea. Beneath it was the underworld, known as Xibalba, a dark and complex realm of spirits and ancestors. And certain people, especially rulers, shamans, and elders, were believed to move between these worlds. This king was a ruler, had a deity-like name, and was a toothless elder. Boy, his power level must have been off the charts. But that's not all. Here's the eerie part. The tomb was buried beneath another tomb, which was discovered all the way back in 1993. Archaeologists were investigating a different burial when they realized there was another chamber hidden beneath it, an interesting hiding place. Remarkably, it worked. For more than 1,600 years, no one found him. This makes Chak's tomb the first ever discovered at Caracol that can be definitely linked to a known ruler, thanks to hieroglyphs, burial context, and artifacts. Now, if you're not a geography or history buff, you've probably never heard of Caracol. Today, it's a remote ruin deep in the jungles of western Belize. But around 16 centuries ago, Caracol was one of the largest and most powerful cities in the entire Maya world. At its peak, it covered over 77 square miles, which, for reference, is larger than modern-day Belize City. Its population was around 100,000 people. That's more than most cities in Europe had at that time. And it wasn't just big, it was advanced. Caracol had pyramids, ball courts, palaces, reservoirs, and a very complex road system. Stuff like limestone superhighways stretching miles through the jungle. Past excavations also turned up arrowheads, drills, spindle whorls, figurines, and everyday tools. King Chak's tomb was one of the 3 major tombs found in the northeast Acropolis. That's near Kana, the central archaeological complex at Karakol, and one of the tallest human-made buildings in all of Belize, even today. It reaches an imposing 141 feet high and contains multiple levels of elite residences and temples. But even with that size, finding tombs isn't easy at all. Most have already been looted. We don't know what else can be hidden there, and in some places, it's too risky to dig up without causing damage. That's why it took researchers decades to finally find something untouched. However, they were able to report over 850 burials and 175 tombs at Karakol over their 4-decade-long project. One of the earliest tombs, dating to around 350 CE, was a cremation burial containing ritual artifacts such as obsidian blades, atlatl spear points, and ceramic styles associated with central Mexico. So, if you're an archaeologist, this city seems to be an old historical gold mine. And old historical gold mines often come with warnings. For one thing, it's "keep out, the ceiling might fall on you." Besides, even though scientists are excited about this discovery, if the king can really walk between realms, he's probably annoyed by all this. So what happens now that the king's eternal rest has been disturbed? Well, by opening and stepping into the tomb of Chak, archaeologists basically stepped into a sealed sacred place. Maya tombs weren't just holes in the ground with a fancy coffin. They were sealed like cosmic vaults, locked up with stone, soil, and sometimes elaborate closing rituals. The goal was to mark the end of their use and protect what was inside. Archaeology at Karakol and other Maya cities shows this in action: thick ceiling layers, termination offerings, and carefully placed debris, all saying, "This place is done, keep out." Today's archaeologists still treat them that way, working under Belizean laws and cultural protocols, making sure they explore with respect for what these spaces meant to the people who built them. However, it's eerie to think about mythology and whether King Chak is going to haunt the archaeologists. I guess we'll see. They shouldn't be afraid because he's old and has no teeth. Maybe he will annoy them with rain. He's named after a rain deity, after all, and we still don't know about his true power level. The Mayans were a fascinating civilization, and their structures are still among the most mysterious ones you can find. Despite being isolated from the known world, they also built pyramids without cranes, mapped stars without telescopes, and knew how to bury a king. Karakol is full of secrets: a hidden tomb under another tomb, a toothless king with a scary-looking mask and a deity's name. Almost unbelievable. And amazingly, there is still stuff being found. So maybe it's not too late for me after all. But first, let's see the aftermath of this curse, huh?